Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, theater, and entertainment. And I'm so thrilled today to be joined by the team behind the series For the Record, which recently had its South by Southwest premiere. We have Julian De Zotti, who is an actor and also the creator of the series, and Anna Hopkins, who's also an actor in the show. And Julian, I wanted to start by talking about the initial genesis of this. And you actually started by building a proof of concept to then bring on a music supervisor, because that's so much the fabric of what this show is. So what was it that you really wanted to create in that initial proof of concept to get to that stage?
It was, it came out of a painful breakup and us divvying up our vinyl collections, and it kind of, and also talking to other friends of mine who had gone through similar experiences, and we all came to this agreement that an album collection, each album represents a different moment in the evolution of a romantic relationship, and I thought that was just such a great way to approach a love story, and rather than this one starts kind of in reverse. This is the end of the relationship, which I think is such a great, complicated, fraught period, and is so just great for drama and conflict, and would be a great place to start. And then from there, see how can we get these people back together, if that's even possible. And music would be the key to that. I'm such a big music fan, and I've never seen a show where the music itself is the narrative centerpiece for the series. It is the inspiration for the stories, and is also the literal connection between these characters, and is the thing that literally brings them together. So that's sort of what was going on in my mind. And then I've just been a guy who I'll write something and I just have to make it. I want to see something through the whole entire process. And this was just something that felt like I could get a bunch of friends together, a really great DOP, and just do it quick and dirty, and in our friends' apartments, and do it in a day. And if we can capture the essence, the emotion, and have some really great actors, I think you get the sense of what this really is, and it could really affect you emotionally. And so I passed it on to my music supervisor, who I worked with for a while, and he immediately just saw the value in that. Not only he responded to it, viscerally, but also for a label or some of these companies that were just trying to find ways to unload their catalog all the time. This was a great way that they are the sort of the star of the show, and they found that really, really exciting for them as an opportunity to showcase their music in another way.
That's amazing. And then Anna, as you were going through the scripts initially, and finding a lot of those key details in the scripts of who this character was going to be and what this relationship had been, whether it's, okay, they were together for 6 years, or the line that she says to him about, you never fought for anything when we were together, what were the most useful details that you first were able to start pulling out of the scripts to start shaping her?
I think the thing that I latched on to the most was having been the person to end the relationship, and sort of start at a place of feeling like this is the right decision, and then becoming a little bit unsure about that. I think that is something that we can all relate to. We want something to be cut and dry, especially when we're the one making the decisions. And so once I go past that finish line, I will be fixed and everything will be good. And so I loved, there was a nice sort of gray area for Angela, where we meet her and what she's going through as she continues on through the story, that she's reflecting on her choices. And yeah, I think that was sort of the biggest part of how I built off of her. She's constantly a contradiction, I think.
And Julian, as you were going through potential music to include in the show, particularly for that very first episode where it's the two of them dividing up their record collection, like you were mentioning, that tells us a lot about who they are as people, what their relationship was, certain dynamics and stories that they tell through sharing these records. And it's a really eclectic mix. It's everything from like Lana Del Rey to the Pet Shop Boys to Pavarotti. So how did you really think about the multitude of genres that you wanted to bring in to tell us different aspects of these two characters?
It was a mixture of albums I just love, albums that you see the cover. Sometimes the cover is even more iconic, than the music. And also working with the music supervisor and with the label, they have particular albums that they're really passionate about, or hey, they have a re-release of the Bob Marley album, let's get that out there. So it was sort of a mixture of all those things. And then kind of curating what are sort of the more obscure albums that some people would know, because this makes this couple look kind of cool. They kind of look outdated. They're maybe hipsters, but they also love NWA. And I mean, it was for me also like, what are the most iconic images we can get? And the fact that I could get some of those albums, I was like, we can get that. Yeah, we're putting that in there. We're finding a way. So it was sort of a mixture of all those different things.
Yeah. And Anna, was there a difference for you in the way that you prepared for this role, given how much music was a part of this character and the fact that you could take a lot of that music and listen to it and really think about how it was part of the fabric of her and what her backstory and connection to all of these songs would be?
Well, you know, at the beginning when I first joined the project, I didn't actually know the background of their ability to use the music. So I've said this a few times, like I thought in the script, these were just sort of placeholders, like a lot of screenwriters put in their wish list of what they want to hear during the scene, but they never actually get that. And then I sort of like, it was like, oh no, we're using the Beach Boys in this episode. It's like, what? Okay. And so in terms of preparation, I think it was less about actually using the music that was in the show and just more going back to some of the songs and albums that really mean something to me, and just kind of getting back into that headspace and you know, remembering like sharing a song with somebody, that's such a specific feeling, and so just kind of refreshing myself on that, and then sort of transferring that onto Ray and Angela, and then I didn't practice breaking albums at home, though. I only did that on the day.
On the day.
I had the same cynicism, even in watching the final version. I was like, there's no way that you could afford these songs for a series. Like, that's just not how the world works. But to that point, Julian, you also actually got almost every song that you wanted, bar a couple. And with the one or two where you didn't get the initial song choice that you wanted, did that cause you to change the fabric of any of the scenes at all? Because it's not just the case of like playing a song over a scene. Again, it's really telling us character details throughout the series with them.
Yeah, a little bit actually. You know, there's a couple instances of that. The main one was episode 2. Originally, the episode, not to offend Johnny Orlando, but it was written for Shawn Mendes. We were in talks with him to be able to it up, and then Shawn became world famous, and it just wasn't possible. And so Universal recommended Johnny. You know, Johnny's he's the up and coming next hot thing. He's got really great taste, and he's a great musician. He can act, and so I changed the episode to fit that narrative, and Johnny's fan base is different than Shawn's fan base. We even allude to that. We make a little joke about Shawn being too old. So we had to change the dynamic where Angela and Madison were concerned, the ages, just how Madison talks to her aunt about being positive and what, you know, who Johnny really is. And that's just me like being completely inspired by, you know, like the Jonas Brothers documentary and just watching a lot of fan videos and like, why are they so into these artists? And so that really switching and pivoting to Johnny really helped me get into the fandom of it a little bit more and make it even more specific. And then the other example I'll use is we shot 2 versions, one with Marvin Gaye and one with Bob Marley, because we didn't know which one we were actually going to get to play. And I think I got what I wanted, which was I kind of got to do both, which is we had a discussion about Marvin Gaye, and then it ended up being a different protest song that I think is even more recognizable. I just was surprised by how many more people knew who Bob Marley was, and it's so that even worked in our favor and to our benefit.
And then for both of you, in terms of constructing this relationship dynamic between the two of them, because right from that very first scene, you have to capture this really extensive history between the two of them and all of the emotions that come with that. And within that, with any breakup, there's always 2 different versions of perceived truth and then the actual truth somewhere in the middle. So how much did the two of you talk about what each of their perception was in terms of what happened in the relationship, what happened in the breakup, and then what the likely reality in the middle potentially was?
You know, we never, like the way that we approached it is, I think we really came at it with what our perceived truths were, and we never discussed what the real one was. But I do think that the way that it's written, and that's what I loved about reading it and then also seeing it, is that the history there shows up so quickly, without much, like you didn't have to write too much. And so, those flashbacks to the record store and, just the way that it's written and it's crafted, I think shows that they both have really different perceptions of what happened, but there's still a lot of love there. And so, we never talked, we just came at it as Ray and Angela, I think.
Yeah. Really? I mean, I think we had one meeting in a coffee shop. We talked about the show, and then it was like, see you on set. And I mean, I knew of Anna's work, and I think we hung out at a party like recently before then. And I was like, there's just something, you just gel with a person, the same sense of humor, like, oh, she's riffing, she's fun. And I'm like, this is going to be totally cool and fine. And that's another part of that relationship that has to work as well, that they had a really great rapport and a sense of comedy, and banter, because that's so much a part of what brings people together as well. But you're absolutely right. I think it was really about, as an actor, you think the thoughts of whatever your backstory is you create for the character, and you just let the camera do the work.
Yeah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit as well about the setting and the location for that first episode, because it's very clear that this was the home that they shared together. Mm-hmm. Angela's now living there. And there's even a line about, oh, I love what you've done with our place. So she's clearly redesigned and is kind of using it to form what her identity is going to be outside of this relationship as an individual. So for you, Anna, I was interested in how the details that you looked at in terms of the production design were helpful in understanding what she's trying to shape her identity into in that way. And then for you, Julian, in figuring out what those details on set were going to be with the production team.
Well, I loved, it was such a beautiful room. And so I was so happy. It's always nice to walk onto set and be like, oh yeah, this is actually great taste. But yeah, I just kind of tried to, I actually in my own life, I'm constantly changing around the furniture, especially during the pandemic. I'm like, okay, this is the new living room. So I think just that idea of even moving the couch and where things used to be, and then sort of saying, this is my new space. That's kind of how I imagined it. When we walked onto set, I wasn't trying to think about what it used to look like. I was just trying to live in it as though it's like my place now. And I think that was the most important thing for Angela to sort of emote as she was welcoming him back into the house.
And then for me, it's a mixture of things. There was a bit of that in the script, just like, this feeling of softer colors, a bit more of a feminine aesthetic. And then just because I think without a guy there, I think there's a little bit of a shift. I'm not gonna say there's a huge shift, but I definitely wanted to show that there was a difference. And then that Ray is thinking that oh God, she actually made this place look better than it was. Okay. And then working with our production designer, who's fantastic, and just, I was like, I want this kind of color here, maybe. How do we make this room feel warmer and more welcoming and cozy? And then the record, the collection and the record player is also going to be a very crucial part and corner of that. And so how do we make that really come alive? And then the switch from day to night, I think it even comes alive even more, and those colors are really vibrant and emotional, and it makes you just it just gives you this warm, nostalgic feeling. So that's kudos to Andrea Lee, our production designer, and our props person, and everybody who kind of, they knocked it out of the park in terms of getting to what I wanted people to see.
And Julian, you also co-directed the first episode with Lisa Balin. And when you were looking at directors for the series, why was it so vital for you to be working on directing that first episode? And what was behind the decision to have it be a co-directorial effort between the two of you?
Well, selfishly, it was because you need credits as a director to move forward. And I hadn't directed anything in a while. I was more so show running and writing and acting, and directing scares the shit out of me. It's just one of those things where, for someone who's chronically indecisive, who have to make decisions a million times a day, it just gives me anxiety. And also being on camera, you want to focus on the performance. So I felt pretty quickly that I needed some help, and it was stressful to do the original short film where I directed it on my own, but had an outside eye. My producers were there, and it was just so helpful as an actor to be able to lean on someone going, yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that, this isn't resonating. I need that, because sometimes when you're in it, you just can't, you don't know what it's looking like. And I think the more experience you get, you do get way better at that. So it was important, again, for me as a director to be a part of that process. And then Lisa, our producer, who hadn't directed in a while, wanted to do that. And so for me, like, well, that's a no-brainer. Let's just say we're co-directing it together. And then quickly about the other directors, it was very, very important that I found people who were, you know, that knew of the worlds in which we are speaking of. Teresa Rebeck, you know, a woman of a certain age who just always crafts such strong female-centric roles. She was the right person to tell a story about a late in life romance. Matt Eastman, really steeped in the EDM world, knows that, like, he's just a party guy, he's a dynamic guy, and he doesn't know how to birth a baby, but he knows how to stage a really crazy concert and make that so exciting, because it's more about the drop, and that just getting the sensation of the drop at a concert to match with what this baby being birthed. And then finally with Sud Sutherland, it was important. I've always wanted to work with Sud's highly respected director, but for that third episode, it's crucial that, you know, the arguments that are being thrown back and forth are equally weighted, and that I'm paying tribute and respect to a certain experience. I'm coming at it and writing it from my own experience, and I'm definitely inspired by, I'm in an interracial relationship, so I'm inspired by the discussions that we've had, but I think it's very, very important that there's just a sense of authentic representation, and Suds was the guy to do that. And he liked that this was a no holds barred episode, that we're talking about really complicated issues, and that was what drew him to the project, because he's very, very busy directing television. So for him, this was a chance to talk about something he doesn't normally get to talk about. And then flipping stereotypes about the Reverend as well, and like a different way to to look at the Tyler Perry romantic leading man, and what's a different way we can approach this kind of trope. And those are sort of some of the discussions we were having.
Yeah. And Anna, we touched upon the second episode of the series a little bit before, but it's very much your character spending her first time ever going through the holiday season as a single person after 6 years in a relationship. And she's with her niece, whose parents are at a couples retreat trying to fix their marriage. So it's these kind of two lost souls coming together. And your character is supposed to be the one shepherding her her niece through this, but is really the one saying, you know, love shit, don't believe in any of it. Let me take you to all of these places and show you where my heart was broken. And how did having so much detail in that episode of, you know, okay, this is who she was dating when she was in high school, and an experience that she had that still resonates and still sits with her and is still part of her emotional makeup. How did that really help you to add a lot more layers and complexities to who she was as a character, even though it's such a brief episode, it gives us so much of her?
Yeah, I loved that. That was really fun to do. I think, I mean, it was all there in the writing. So it was more just kind of like jumping in on the ride and like having a lot of fun. And it shows you, it's nice to see that, you know, we're all made up of these experiences, even though, you know, even from our first memory of, you know, having a crush on somebody all the way till, you know, marriage, like we are built from these memories, and also realizing the experiences that we kind of hold on to create our identities, and how we should maybe sometimes let go of those, like they're becoming outdated or they're creating walls for us. So I think her going back and being sort of stuck in the past a little bit helped me understand why she you know, why she has a hard time sort of just letting go and accepting love. Yeah, she was stuck in the past a little, as you can see in episode 2.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the scenes that the two of you shared together is the way that you're able to shift tonally and create these really really juxtaposed emotional spaces, which feel very natural and very realistic. You know, it's completely real that one moment they'd be starting to think about the emotions of when they were together, and then when his girlfriend calls, that completely shifts the mood and suddenly it's completely different. So how much did you really consciously think about what those tones were going to be, what those shifts were going to be, and how to pull them off versus the way that the writing just really naturally gave it to you with these two characters in these scenes?
A good question. I mean, for me, it's yes. I'm always start with drama and undercut it with cynicism, wit, and comedy, and so that's where I sort of approached from the writing perspective. I mean, for me as an actor, it's I'm in simpatico with my partner. You're in the moment, as they always say, and so I'm whatever Anna's giving me, I'm feeding off of that. So if I sense that I can feel it when her emotion has changed, and so I'm naturally, without me, like as an actor, like now I have to change. It's just, if you are in the moment and you are reacting, the camera is going to be your friend and is going to pick that up. So really it's about breathing and sensing the different shifts that your partner is giving you. And that's kind of how I approached it. I didn't want to sort of telegraph anything because I knew Anna's just so great and she's lovely to play off of. So for me, it was like, I just want to be an emotionally available partner in that moment.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think the writing really, again, like there is that shift between the vulnerable moments and the comedy and the real emotional moments. And so again, I think especially in our first episode, Angela's kind of driving the whole thing. And so I think it was that was what was going on for me, is like I kept kind of trying to keep things in control, and what was pulling me back was our memories and that phone call. And so I was kind of going in between those two, and obviously working with Julian, it was really easy to kind of go in and out and just get on that roller coaster.
Julian, as you were shaping out the episodes at the beginning of this writing process, it's also in sorts an anthology series. We start with these two characters, then we follow Angela, then we follow Ray, and then we actually go off into the worlds of these other characters that we haven't even met yet. And then eventually it loops back round to them. So as you were thinking about who these other characters were that we were going to visit their worlds and learn about them to eventually find our way back, how did you begin that process of really shaping out what's going to enhance the story that I've already been telling you about this couple, and how do we want to make those linear connections in order to find our way back to the beginning at the end?
I mean, I knew I had the skeleton of the love story. I knew I had to the journey is to bring them back together. It's an album, it's full circle. You're seeing side A, and then you're going to see side B. And then it just was me, like, what are those different instances where music is that thing that, it's the soundtrack to a first love. It's the soundtrack to an argument in cultural appropriation. It's the soundtrack to, it has this incredible spiritual resonance for people of faith, but also has this incredible sexual relevance. People like to get it on. And so what are those different scenarios through character that we're going to dramatize these scenarios through music. And so I always start with character. So I'd have these crazy like images of, I had an image of Lyric Bent dancing to I Feel It Coming. I don't know why, it just came into my head, and I'm like, that's it. So who is this guy, and why does he have this affinity to this particular song? And then that's where that was built from. And then same with Joy in the 5th episode, an elderly woman chugging a bottle of champagne, telling her family off, and walking out to the sounds of Nina Simone was just an image I had. And I go, okay, so these are some of these characters. I knew I wanted to be a part of I wanted to show the woke side of Ray, and me just sticking my foot in my mouth and wading into this completely unprepared to this argument on cultural appropriation. So I had these characters and these stepping stones, and then it was just about finding cool ways to connect them, sometimes directly and sometimes randomly, and randomly can be just as rewarding to an audience. But I definitely wanted to reward the audience for sticking out and watching the show. It's not just an anthology where each episode is a standalone. I always have so much more fun when I'm watching something where I can put and piece these things together and they have their own sort of subtle connections. And yeah, I'd say that music is the thing that connects us, the universal thing that unites us. So how do we do that? Well, music is going to be the driving force of the show, and it's going to be the thing that connects all those stories.
And then, Anna, one of the aspects that's incredibly relatable with Angela is the fact that she is in this place where, in order to try and prevent herself from being hurt again, she's built a lot of defense mechanisms and put a lot of walls up around herself. So how did you really think about what the construction of those defense mechanisms would be specifically?
Well, I already have them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I very much relate to Angela in that way. That's work that I've done, you know, especially as an actor. Like I've had to, you know, untrain myself a lot of the time so I'm very aware of when I'm protecting myself, or I'm not being vulnerable in order to avoid pain and stuff like that. So it was not a hard aspect of a character for me to, like, if I were to play my niece in that, it would be so hard and unnatural. I would have to do a lot of preparation. But I think that I think most of us are aware of when we you know, when we're trying to protect ourselves. So it was just about isolating that, and again, I'm very comfortable in that place. Sadly.
And for both of you, in the process and the journey of making this series, what do you feel is the biggest thing that you really had the opportunity to learn or evolve and have taken away with you?
I'll just say that I loved playing this genre. Is not something that I do very often, that I get to do very often. To just play drama, and also the moments of humor that come with drama. So I really learned, you know, I just got to practice in a genre that I don't usually get to do. So I was really happy to come away with that.
I think for me, it's just, I can do the thing that, like, I set out to do this and I did it. It took me a while. And look, it's a collaborative medium. I'm not here without all the other people who helped me put this together, and so many different moving parts, getting the music, all those things. But for me, it's just the feeling, a sense of the feeling that I accomplished it, and I got my vision out there. And you learn things along the way in terms of, you know, oh, I'm never doing that again. You know, I'm never doing 20 scenes in one day, or I wish we had a little bit more money, or, you know, the same old things you always tell yourself that you'll do the next time and then you never do. But really, for me, it was just a sense of an accomplishment and a gaining of a bit more confidence, and now trying to get even more bold in my storytelling, but also provide space for other people who don't get to tell their stories often, and how can I augment and support that vision as well.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the series, and sounds like the South by Southwest premiere was really fantastic, and
yes.
And congratulations to all of that. And thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today.
Thanks for your wonderful questions. Thanks for having us.
So much.